A remarkable event took place at a hotel in Washington, D.C. this week, which has been called the Woodstock of Criminal Justice. Bipartisan summit, which brought together some unlikely partners, including representatives from the ACLU as well as Koch Industries, for the sole purpose of reforming our criminal justice system. It also brought together President Obama and the creator of the HBO series The Wire, David Simon, who had some interesting things to say about criminal justice.
Yeah, part of what your show depicted, though, is also that there's a generational element to this, right? So you got entire generations of men being locked up, which means entire generations of boys growing up either without a father, or if they see their dad, they're seeing him in prison.
The drug trade itself, it's like a company town, and this is a industry so large and with so much money around it that it's hard to get around it.
The President's full conversation with David Simon was played on a big screen for the event's organizers and speakers, which included a varied coalition from former Obama advisor Van Jones, Democratic Senator Cory Booker, to former Republican Speaker of the House Newt Gingrich, whose 1994 contract with America once proposed funding for more prisons. We're starting, I think, to see a real, genuine sea change in politics on the issue of crime and criminal justice, because there is a growing understanding the status quo is untenable, an abomination. I mean, one of the biggest areas of growth of government in a generation has been mass incarceration. Look at that chart. 500% increase over the past 30 years, according to the research and advocacy group, the Sentencing Project. And the need to re-examine criminal justice policies has led to some concrete legislation introduced on the Hill. Smarter Sentencing Act, which would cut mandatory minimum sentences for nonviolent drug offenders, as well as the Redeem Act, which, among other things, allows people convicted of nonviolent crimes to petition to have their records sealed, which in turn would make it easier for them to find work once they're released from prison. I sat down with Matt Kibbe, president of the conservative libertarian group Freedom Works, and John Forte, Grammy-nominated recording artist, who served 7 years of a 14-year sentence for a first-time nonviolent drug offense before he was pardoned by President George W. Bush in 2008. I asked John about that experience, about what brought him to the Criminal Justice Reform Summit this week.
As for why I'm here in D.C., I'm participating in the Bipartisan Summit on criminal justice reform because some people might say that I'm actually the poster child for a bipartisan initiative because I'm here. 7 years freed from a 14-year federal prison sentence for a first-time nonviolent drug offense during a Republican administration, and with bipartisan support. So while I was away, while I was doing my time, I had people who championed for my personal freedom, and now I'm here because I don't have the luxury of putting that time behind me, and nor would I want to. I think that I would be doing not only myself but the powers that be a grave disservice for giving me that second chance.
I mean, it's remarkable to imagine the difference between those 7 years of your life, 7 more years being spent inside, incarcerated, and what you've been able to do in the 7 years outside. In some ways, that's kind of the object lesson, right? That there are thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, hundreds of thousands, if not more people in the system of whom that might be said.
You're absolutely correct. I don't want to monopolize too much of the time, but the facts are true. The vast majority of men and women who are serving time or who will serve time will come home, and we can't, as a country or as a people, as humanity, attempt to put people away and isolate them and act as if they're not there, and then have nothing for them upon their return. This is bigger than an 800-pound gorilla in the room when you're talking about millions of people who are obviously impacted by something as vicious as this. Unfortunately, it's not so far gone that we've crossed the Rubicon where it can't be corrected, and that's why we're here.
So, Matt, here's the big question to me, the make or break question, right? And there's been some folks on the sort of libertarian right who've been doing some great work on this, on decarceration, on ending the drug war. But the rubber really hits the road to me on politics. I mean, do you think the politics are shifting such that some governor comes out and does something to reduce the levels of incarceration, and one of the people who's released commits a crime, and they're not going to face the wrath politically for that?
Well, I think politics is always a lagging indicator of where the American people are. And if you want to understand why so many Republicans and Democrats are coming forward on serious reforms to the criminal justice system, it's because the American people are pushing them to do that. And you can look at the Smarter Sentencing Act and the strange bedfellows that are co-sponsoring that bill, Mike Lee and Dick Durbin, Ted Cruz and Sheldon Whitehouse, on what planet do these four guys work together? I think it's because they're hearing from their constituents back home, and part of it is about too much federal power, too much federal dictating from the top down, and there are cost elements as well, but I think it's really about fundamental American values, innocent until proven guilty, equal treatment under the law, and these are not Republican or Democratic issues.
John, do you think you're getting more of a hearing because of the particularities of your circumstances? Are there people that you feel like you're speaking for, having been afforded this very rare shot at redemption?
Without question, I tell people that I feel as if I won the lottery. So things like birthdays and holidays for me aren't reserved for one day a year. When you have your freedom taken away from you, you realize that it's never about those big things. It's never about the big house or the big car, everything that you probably risked your freedom for in the first place before you lost it. It's the little things in life, and that's what's really precious and fundamental here. The humanity, the decency. We are talking about people, in many cases, who made a mistake, and in many cases, a non-violent mistake. And to know that there is a solution to this, to know that there are better days ahead. And I'm not talking about in a sort of spiritual kumbaya, quasi, whatever. Like I'm not that guy. I'm talking about pragmatic solutions to pragmatic problems.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you that, Matt. Pragmatically, you know your way around Washington, the Capitol. I mean, where do you see the low-hanging fruit from a policy standpoint, right? I mean, there is this sort of rising tide of sentiment. I think the reduction in the amount of actual crime people are experiencing, is playing a part. We're seeing the drug war be rolled back in really exciting ways. Where do you see the low-hanging fruit policy-wise?
Well, I think civil asset forfeiture looks like it has the largest bipartisan support right now, but I happen to think that the Smarter Sentencing Act, dealing with mandatory minimums and really tackling the overpopulation, the overcriminalization in our prisons, that's the opportunity. And if we can get to that before we get into presidential politics, because, Rand Paul has been one of the guys leading the charge on this stuff, and he's really changed the conversation within the Republican Party. But at some point, we all get back into our corners and start fighting about who's going to be president. That's why I think we have to do it this year. Otherwise, we wait until 2017. And at that point, regardless of who's president, I think we get it done. But as we've already talked about, this is about people.
Yeah.
This is about saving lives that will be ruined forever if we don't solve the problem now.
That is all in for this evening. The Rachel Maddow Show starts now.